Recapping Avatar The Last Airbender, Episode 1, Aang. And yes, I took notes. First of all, can I say that I've waited 19 years for this? I've watched the show and the spin-off, The Legend of Korra, about 812 times, and I am so very excited, especially because it's being released on my birthday today. Okay, so the episode started off strongly with the firebenders attacking some earthbenders, and right away I noticed the effects, the bending effects, were much better than when we saw this last time with a live action remake with the movie, which we, I think, all collectively like to pretend didn't exist or doesn't exist, because that was embarrassing. Like, cringe factor 10. Actually, it's like a 12, because that was not cute. But so far, the bending effects are much better. Now, fast forward like 2.5 minutes and enter Firelord Sozin. Now, you know the name Firelord Sozin from like Sozin's Comet, you know, the big comet that, you know, crosses the nation and like destroys everything? Yeah, that Firelord Sozin. Now, basically, Firelord Sozin comes up and he's like, yeah, we want to kill everybody. And the Earthbender's like, no, we're not the bad guys. Like, Earthbenders, we're not the targets. Like, oh my gosh, we're not really the targets, are we? And Firelord Sozin's basically like, nah, we don't want to actually kill the Earthbenders. We want to go after the air nomads. And the Earthbender's like, but they're not really, like, strategically, they're not like the enemies. They're not really that strong. And he's like, yeah, but we basically know that they're going to be ones that are going to interrupt our plans because, like, duh, they're the next, you know, Avatar. Like, the Avatar's going to be over there. Like, they're around yonder. Like, hello. And the Earthbender's basically like, I'm going to tell everybody. And Firelord Sozin's like, no, you ain't. And he, like, melts him, basically. Like, he burns him to a crisp, but, like, s'more level 10. And I thought that was, like, epic. The way he literally just fried him. I was like, okay, Firelord Sozin. Then you finally get to actually see, like, the opening scenes, like, the opening credit, and you see the different nations and all the bending and the avatars. Like, I thought they did that very beautifully. It was very artfully depicted, and I thought they did a great job with that. Okay, the next part actually surprised me because they actually went chronologically, because if you remember in the animated series, they don't actually go chronologically. You actually start off with Aang popping out of the iceberg, and then it takes several episodes before you actually find out what led up to Aang becoming, you know, encapsulated in the iceberg, and you find out, like, the history of how that all happened. But with this live action moment, you actually see it chronologically, so you see what leads up to that. The next, you actually get teleported to the Southern Air Temple. You get to see the air nomads. All their outfits, I think, were put together perfectly. I really, really appreciate the tattoos. You actually get to see the added detail to the tattoos that they have, not just, you know, like a painted on blue arrow. But again, I just feel like going through this episode chronologically just makes so much more sense, especially if you're someone who's never seen the animated series like I have 814 and a half times. It just makes more sense this way. Now, Monkey Yatso briefly touches on, you know, basically the previous avatars and the avatar cycle, and this is when he tells Aang that he is the next Avatar, and Aang is like, I think the fuck not. And he does not really love that, and he doesn't want to be alone, and he's like, bro, I'm so young, like, what about my friends? Like, I don't want to leave you, I don't want to leave everyone. And of course he's reassured, like, bro, I'm not going anywhere, but he's obviously conflicted, doesn't love that, doesn't want that. But you are being told way earlier about the Avatar cycle and that whole process, whereas in the animated show, you don't get told that for like a very long time. So again, I really like that. Now it's nighttime. Aang is feeling conflicted. He can't sleep. He goes outside to talk to Appa. Appa is so cute. They did such a great job at bringing Appa to life. Now Appa looks like a chunkier version of Falkor. I love Falkor. And if you actually pay attention, you see Sozin's comet going across the sky. And I was like, oh god, foreshadowing. Because like, again, if you saw the animated series, you know exactly what's about to happen. But I was like, oh no. So Aang hops on Appa. He's like, calmly, like, let's basically go for a ride. Let's go for a little night joy ride. And he takes off into the sky just to think about things, mull things over, if you will. And I was like, oh god, it's about to go down. Now in the animated series, that's not what happens. I mean, it does, but like not in those same emotions. In the animated series, Aang is very upset. He storms off overnight, leaves a note for Monkey Yatso, and just flies off on Appa. There's a huge storm, and that's when Aang is taken down into the ocean or the sea or whatever, and that's when he, you know, freaks out and goes into the iceberg, essentially, and preserves himself for the next 100 years. In this situation, he rather calmly goes off, and then the storm happens. It doesn't really make that big of a difference at the end of the day, but there is a slight difference there. In this situation, he goes off calmly rather than in a fit of rage, basically. But regardless, he leaves, the Fire Nation comes in, and then they launch their attack on all the air nomads. Now, as far as the actual battle between the Fire Nation and the air nomads, I think it was actually depicted really, really well. And what I do like about this battle, although it's obviously devastating, obviously. Hence the name The Last Airbender is the fact that you actually get to see the events of this battle take place, because in the animated show, you don't actually get to see those events take place. You just see the aftermath when Aang, Katara, and Sokka come to visit the Southern Air Temple for the first time, and that's when Aang actually finds out that there actually was this full-on battle. This is also the moment where you really get to see the power that Sozin's comet actually has, and obviously you see that general literally say like, okay, air nomads, you may have fought us off successfully any other time, but not on this night, not with the power of this comet. And then you really get to see their firebending really accelerate in that moment, and he tried to hold off the Fire Nation, those soldiers as much as he could, but obviously he couldn't. Then of course we move on 100 years, and we are now at the Southern Water Tribe. This is, of course, where we meet Sokka and Katara. Now, what I'm liking right away is the depiction of the Southern Water Tribe itself. Now, in the animated series, of course, you don't really get to go inside a lot of, the actual buildings, if you will. So you really don't get to see how they're all living. And honestly, comparing the Southern Water Tribe, the Northern Water Tribe looks luxurious. Everything's like a palace there. It's meant to look like this huge built-up civilization, whereas the Southern Tribe is always kind of depicted as almost like a poor place. It's very run down. It's not like this built-up civilization. So it was nice to really actually be able to go inside these, I guess, homes, buildings, lodgings, whatever you want to call them, and actually see what they look like inside. And some of them were actually very, very nice. So it was nice to see that. Of course, Gran was looking real cute. She was looking adorable. As far as like actual fighting styles, although it was very, very short, I think the encounter between Prince Zuko, Sokka, and Aang re-emphasized, so far at least, that they're not going to be as overdramatic as they were when it came to like the ratio between movements and actual bending results or bending effects, like it was in, again, the movie that we're going to try our best to pretend still doesn't exist. Because I feel like in the movie there was all this like arm waving and body movements for like very, very minimal like visual effects when it came to like the bending, So I feel like there's a good ratio of that, if that makes any sense. So I'm liking that. As far as Katara's bending, I do like the progression, because at first, of course, she's like very timid. I'm not a good bender. I can't bend anything, but I really want to try. Aang gets with her a little bit, and she's like, ooh, look at this little ball of water. I'm feeling a little kind of confident, but like, maybe not. And then, of course, at the end, she's the one that saves Appa and the gang from Prince Zuko's fire blast, and she's like, yeah, Tuck's hair braids. As far as the pacing of this episode, I think it's actually pretty good. I'm wondering how many seasons there's going to be of this show. I can't imagine too many. There are 8 episodes of this first season, and already the pacing of this first episode is moving along rather quickly, so I do like that. And I know the directors were saying that obviously these characters are going to age, and we can't have them age too fast, because overall this whole process of him becoming the Avatar and like obviously taking down the Fire Nation is not actually like a long process. It's only actually a couple months from like, start to finish. So I'm interested to see how this whole series plays out. So overall, I thought this was a very good episode. Be on the lookout for my recap for episode 2.